Hey guys, this is Miss Christine. I hope you're all doing well. I'm glad that you've joined us for our second session of art this year. Our classes are going to go from November to December this year, and we'll try to get some fun activities in there. Today, I wanted to go with kind of a fall image, and we have already done a lot of trees and leaves and stuff, so I thought we would maybe move on to a little animal. So we're going to work on drawing a squirrel eating a little acorn and hanging out in the woods. Now, this particular image might look a little complicated at first. I don't want you to get overwhelmed by it, okay? Again, I've been doing art for many years, and so mine might look a little bit more complicated, but I'm gonna also give you simpler options as we go along, okay? And if you want to try something a little bit more complex, then you can try the things that I'm going to show you as well, but don't feel like you need to do anything very complicated, okay? Just do your best, whatever your best is, and I'm sure that it'll be lovely, okay? So for this assignment, we need to use our watercolor paper. We also need a pencil, a good eraser, a sharpie, and our watercolors. With our watercolors, a flat brush that's a little bit bigger, like maybe like almost an inch big, flat brush, and then just a smaller regular round brush would be fine. And make sure you have either all-purpose or multi-purpose art paper, multimedia paper, or special watercolor paper, okay? Oh, and also get a jar of water and a paper towel. Okay, so we'll get started. I'll see you in just a minute. Okay guys, so the very first thing that I want you to do for our squirrel drawing is I want you to draw some guidelines, okay? With your pencil, I want you to lightly draw just a straight line that goes down the center of your page. And then another line that goes the other direction across your page, okay? Also make sure now that your paper is horizontal, okay, so it's sideways instead of up and down. And we're gonna start with this. Here, let me show you our image again. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna break our little squirrel down into simpler parts, okay? This part right here is basically gonna be a circle. And this part right here is basically a circle. So we're gonna start with that on our paper. We're gonna draw a big circle and then a little bit of a smaller circle. And then we'll draw a little line, a little curved line to connect them, okay? So let's go back down to our paper now. Okay, so here's our guidelines. I want you to make your first circle starting right here at the center, the cross point of our two guidelines, okay? And now notice that I'm not using great big strokes. That's because it's easier for me to get the shape that I want if I use a bunch of little strokes instead of one big stroke, okay? And it does not need to be perfect because we're gonna tweak it a little bit. Also, don't draw this too dark because we are going to erase and kind of modify it as we go along. Okay, but basically you should have a circle like that. And then we're gonna start over here and we're gonna overlap just a little bit into our other circle. And I don't know, we're gonna make it about that big, I think. And just draw a second circle like this. Okay. After we have those, we're gonna draw a curved line. This is gonna be his back. It's gonna go from there right down like that. His floofy tail is gonna start right here where our two lines meet. And we're gonna go up and around, kind of like that, okay? And then we're gonna make a smaller curved line like that. and then come back down like that. Okay, so it's kind of like a great big, like rainbow shape, and then almost like a big U, a big wide U, and then a small curve up and back down around to, you know, close to the base of our circle here. Okay, so that's what you should have right now. The next thing that we're going to put in is, so this was our big circle that we made. Now we're going to make a little circle, or a smaller circle inside of it. And we're also going to put a little line right here to distinguish between his belly and his other leg. So we're going to come back down here, and we're going to start about here and go up and around. Like that for his leg. It's kind of like his hip and his leg. And then over here, we're just going to make a little bit of a wiggly line to come down for his belly. Okay. Now I want to get out our eraser, and we're going to erase a few different lines. First of all, our guidelines. And guys, don't go crazy with your eraser. You don't have to erase like really wild. Just use the edge and gently erase the parts that you need to erase. I know a lot of times kids get a little crazy with their eraser, but watch what you're erasing. You don't need to erase the whole page, just erase where the lines are. Okay, so I've basically gotten rid of my guidelines. Now the other thing that I want to erase is this bit of this curve from our big circle that's inside of our little circle. So it looks a little bit more like that. So that circle is this whole thing. So out of that, we need to carve in his arm and the bottom part of his head right here. So I'm going to start about right here. Just go like that. To be the top part of his arm. And then from that, we're just going to kind of curve back out. And that's going to be like the bottom of his, I guess, of his chin. And then we're going to make a little angle up to be the bottom of his face, where his mouth is. Again, that's our original, okay? So we made a line here, and then we cut back over straight, and then we angled up a little bit. Okay, so that's the basic outline of our face. Now from here, I'm actually going to draw up a little bit like that, kind of for the, kind of like his jawline. And then right here, I'm going to put some ears, a big triangle ear with a slanty line underneath. And then his other ear is a big triangle ear with another kind of slanty line underneath. Okay, then his eye is going to be about right here, and it's going to be a great big oval. And the trick to his eye is that he's going to have another oval inside of it, and eventually the inner oval will be dark, and that outer oval is going to stay nice and white. Okay, I'm going to draw just a little bit of a line down there, and a little bit of a line like that. Now for his nose, I'm going to come over here and basically make like a C. And we'll do this later with our Sharpie, so it's not as important now, but we're gonna put a bunch of little dots there. That's where his little whiskers are gonna come out. And then down here, we're gonna have a little mouth, just a teeny tiny little mouth. Let's do a little bit of erasing now. I'm gonna erase this circle line from inside of his ears. And I kind of want to erase this line just a tiny bit, like it can still kind of show, but even though it was basically a circle, I kind of want to modify it just a little bit so that it doesn't look like a perfect circle. Okay, so right here, so see how I can still see it, but it's very, very light. So from here, we're going to take his little hand, we're going to make a little curve, a little bump for his hand, and then we're just going to make some real skinny little fingers. Okay, and then the bottom of his hand. So it kind of looks like that. And then we're going to go ahead and make that arm that we had. It's kind of like his little elbow. It goes down and then back up again. Kind of like that. And it doesn't have to go all the way up his back, you know, just to about right there. Maybe something like that. Okay, and then this line up here should be a little bit more fluid. Our two circles should kind of connect a little bit. And I feel like there should be a little bit more of a dip right there. So I just added a little bit of a dip. Okay, now, so we're getting there. He's looking pretty close to a squirrel. Oops, I just realized we need to erase this too. This line between his nose, and his hand. Okay, when we drew our circles, that was to give us a basic outline for his shape. But then we need to go back in and modify it a little bit. Okay, I'm feeling like his belly looks really big. I think I'm gonna make his leg a little bit bigger. I'm gonna bring it up a little bit higher. More like that. If you like yours the way it was, that's fine. I just felt like maybe that would work a little bit better. Okay guys, so this is what my squirrel looks like now. And I'm gonna go in and put a couple little feet down here. His feet are just gonna come out and then have little pointy toes, like that. Okay, and then his other one's gonna come out and have some little toes and go back in like that. Okay, now what we haven't done on him yet is make his fur shaggy. A squirrel does not have perfectly straight lines on him like this. You know, they're going to be a little bit shaggy. So we can do this more also when we do our Sharpie. But I want you to think about how, you know, he's really furry. So these lines are going to be a little bit more, I don't know, a little bit more jagged. Okay, as we go along, we'll work on that. I think that is basically it for our squirrel for the moment. Let's give him a little acorn to eat. So he's gonna be holding it in his hand. We're basically making a big U for his acorn. Okay, but make sure that it goes in, you know, underneath his hand like that. And then we're gonna do a line across. And kind of like an oval across the top like that. And a little, like a little stem right there. That's gonna be his little acorn. Okay, and I wanna put a leaf on the ground here. I think that the season for this picture is right in between, let me see, right in between summer and fall. I think it's like the very beginning of fall. And our little guy is realizing that he's gotta get ready for winter. So I'm gonna start down here underneath my squirrel, and I'm gonna draw a nice line. It's gonna kind of go up like that, okay? That's gonna be the entire stem and the inside kind of vein of our leaf. And this is gonna be an oak leaf. So we're gonna leave this right here, the way that it is, and then over here, we're gonna make a little line, almost like a V, on our other line. And then another one down here maybe, right there. Okay, so it should look like that. Now when we go to draw the actual shape of the leaf, I want you to start right here. We're gonna go up at an angle and we're gonna curve around our line, okay? And then before we get to the center line again, we're gonna curve back up. And we're gonna curve up and around our next line, like that. Then we're gonna curve up and around the end of our big line. And the next side is going to be symmetrical to our first side. So I'm going to bring that line down to here, and then I'm going to go out around our other line, and come in, and then go out again, and all the way down to here. And that's going to be the basic shape of our oak leaf. I'm going to make a smaller one back here, the same thing. So it's just going to be a straight line. With our diagonal lines coming off of it. Remember, those are the little veins inside of the leaf. We're going to come up and around. And then we're going to curve before we get to our line. Go back up and around. And then curve and go straight up and around our top of our leaf. And then we'll do the same thing on the other side. We'll curve around, come back up, curve around, like that. Okay, so now we have our squirrel, our acorn, and our two leaves. This is just some grass, and we're gonna throw that in later. That's really, really, really easy. I wanna try to get this little fern back here. And guys, there are all different kinds of ferns. This, I don't even know is a legitimate fern. It's just sort of something I made up because it looks kind of like a fern. I have many kinds of ferns in my garden. And this is sort of the basic shape of any fern. Okay, I'm gonna start by just making lines that go up from here. I'm about, you know, just kind of behind the squirrel a little bit, lower than his tail, kind of between the bottom of his tail and the bottom of his body, sort of halfway in between there is where I'm going to start these lines, okay? And I'm just going to have a whole bunch of them go up. I don't know, that might do, maybe 5. You could do more if you want to. And you can be much more precise than this if you would like, but I basically just kind of did a squiggly line going down the side of my line. Okay, you could be really precise if you want, and maybe you could even like Google a fern if there's a specific kind that you want to draw and have it be real precise. I just kind of wanted to give an indication of some kind of plant back there that looks something like a fern. So I am literally just sort of scribbling these little lines in, just up and, you know, up and down, up and down. And the lines that we drew are kind of the center of the leaves, of the fern leaves. Okay guys, so the next thing that we want to do is put in, I'll show you up here. We're just going to sketch a little line that's going to be kind of like a ground line that's going to go back there, and also like this little bit of shrubbery kind of line that goes back in here. Okay, just draw these really lightly, but we're going to start about right here by our little squirrel and just kind of do it like a little jaggy line going down like that. Oh, there's my cat ripping up my sofa. Sorry about that, a little interruption. And then we're going to come over here just above it and just do like a wiggly line real lightly. that's just kind of to show some shrubs and stuff in the background. Now we're gonna make a bunch of trees, and these are very, very simple. We are literally just doing straight lines. Okay, so straight line, and another straight line. Okay, that's a tree. And some of them might be further back, and they might be skinnier. We're just gonna make, I don't know, however many you want. It doesn't really matter how many you do. I just want something in the background. Maybe I'll do a bigger one right here, a wider one. And you know what? If they're not perfectly straight, like that one's a little wiggly, that is totally fine. Trees are in all different sizes and shapes. Generally speaking, in a forest, the trees are competing for light, so they grow really, really tall and don't have quite as many lower branches as a tree that you might have in your yard. So that's why these are just trunks without any branches coming off of them. Okay, so there we go. And I actually think that it's time to get out our Sharpie now. So let me put this down and get my Sharpie. You guys can pause this if you want. This is Mr. Ron. He loves art time. This is kind of his thing. I just thought I'd give you a glimpse of him. He's my silly cat. Okay, guys. So now we're going to go back in with our Sharpie. And we're basically just going to outline what we've already done to start, okay? Now, I want you to look at your image and look, well, first of all, look at this image. See how I have all these kind of squiggly lines and how the lines around here aren't like straight, but they kind of are bumpy and all through here. So that's what I want you to do on our squirrel, okay? Especially on his body where he's furry. We're gonna basically trace over our lines, but instead of it just being a nice smooth circle, let's see if I can get my Sharpie started here. Okay, sometimes you just gotta get it started a little bit. I just kind of want you to go and make it a little bit jaggy, kind of like fur, okay? And now I'm gonna do this white part here. You can choose to either make like bumps, kind of like that, or you can just go like up and down, up and down, and up and down. Whatever style feels more comfortable to you, but just something so that it can show that he's fluffy. Okay, same thing down here. We'll make him a little bit fluffy. And his little arm. It's gonna have some fluffiness. So you're gonna follow the basic shape, you know, that we had on our pencil, but just don't follow it exactly. Okay, and this is kind of his big belly. I'm gonna bring that down like that. And the back of him is gonna be furry. Now the very top of his head isn't going to be quite as furry. So that's going to be a little closer to normal. But underneath of here is going to really be furry. And this part's a little bit the same, kind of like that. Okay, now his nose is just going to be normal. And the lines for his eyes are definitely going to be normal too. And guys, I'm using an extra fine point or ultra fine point Sharpie. Whatever you guys have is fine. The most important thing is that it is black ink and that it is waterproof. Okay, once I have his eye done, I'm actually going to color it in, but I'm going to make a little circle first, like that. So that can be like a little highlight, and I'm not going to color inside of that circle. It's really just a tiny little white dot, but it's enough to show that there's a little bit of shine in his eyes. Remember that we want to leave that white part around his eye. And go like that. Okay. Actually, we can also color in the bottom part of his nose. We're going to leave the top part white as a reflection also. Okay, now his ears, we're going to make them nice and shaggy. And we're going to do shaggy fur underneath. And shaggy fur underneath. Okay. Now inside of this ear, we're just going to make a little line like that. And a little bit of a shadow or something like that. In front of his ears, we're going to have like just a little, I'm basically scribbling. I'm just going left and right very lightly, guys. Notice that I'm not holding my pen like this, and I'm not like I'm not holding it like this, and I'm not using a lot of pressure. I'm kind of just holding it to the side, and I'm very lightly just kind of going, you know, back and forth sideways. Sometimes the ink doesn't even go on the paper, but that's okay because I just want it to be real light. And I'm going to add some extra shag, some extra shadow and fur right over here, like along his neck and behind his ears. I'm really just going back and forth very lightly. I might put a couple of little strokes up here just to give a little bit of an impression of his fur. Oh, and these lines here around his eyes are kind of like little shadow lines like that. And I'm going to give him another little shadow right here. Again, I'm just scribbling, okay? And now we're going to go back in and do these dots that I was telling you about. I'm going to put lots of dots in here by his nose. And that's going to be for his whiskers. So we're going to bring his whiskers out now. And these are going to be fun. We're not going to stress about where they go. We're just going to draw some lines out. You can make them as long or short as you want, however many you want, whatever feels right to you. And then we're going to do some on the other side, but they're going to be shorter because they're partly hidden by his face or her face, like that. Okay. Now let's go ahead and get his little shaggy tail in. So again, I'm just kind of scribbling up and down and up and down and up and down. And if you want to make bumps instead, that's fine too. Looks like that. Let's get his little hand. His hand is going to be a little bit more detailed. But it's just little pointy fingers, almost like little triangle fingers. And then a curve for his hand right there. Why don't we do the acorn while we're here? This is just a regular outline. There are all different kinds of acorns. If you happen to love acorns and you have a different shape you want to do, absolutely go for it. But I'm just doing a kind of a generic one. Oh, I just realized I didn't do his mouth. Let me get his little mouth in. There. There's his little mouth. And his little toes. Okay, so again, his little toes just come out His foot comes out, and then it's like left, right, left, right, left, right, and then back. Okay, like that. And here too, it's gonna come out, and then left, right, and back, like that. Okay. Now, all of our other lines that we have on here, we're going to basically just cover our pencil, okay? So I'm going to let you guys pause the TV, and you can go ahead and outline your pencil, okay? I want you to just go over top of what you already drew. If you don't go exactly over the pencil, that's perfectly fine, because one of the next things that we're going to do is go in and erase your pencil marks, okay? The pencil marks are to give us an idea of where our drawing is going to be. But we can also change our minds. We can say, hey, you know, I don't like quite how this looks. I'm going to change it a little bit. And now is the time to do that with your Sharpie. Okay. Oh, and I should have mentioned this earlier, guys. While you're working with your Sharpie, you might want to have another piece of paper or something underneath of your paper that you're drawing on, because Sharpie can go through your paper sometimes and like onto your table. I don't want that to happen. So please make sure that you're working, you know, that your table that you're working on is safe. The paper that I'm using is thick enough, and yours probably is as well. You can see it is kind of going through a little bit, but not all the way through. If you guys were to use regular copier paper, it would definitely bleed through and onto the table. So do be careful about that. Okay, I'm gonna stop my camera, and I just want you to keep following these outlines like we did here, okay? Do your fern, do your lines on your leaves, do your trunks for your trees, and then for these lines here, just scribble it in, but don't go over top of your trees. We haven't erased those lines yet. We need to do that. But you're just gonna scribble in a line between your trees. Oops. Yeah, I'm already getting confused. Look at that, I just messed that up. You know what? Sorry guys, you know what? Mistakes happen. So obviously, I'm not gonna have a tree there because I just drew the ground in front of it. So here's what we're gonna do. If you guys do that too and you accidentally color in front of your tree, don't worry about it. Just erase that tree and it's fine. We just don't need a tree there. Okay, don't stress over it. So again, now let's be careful. This is my tree. So I'm gonna go to the right and to the left of my tree. Then over here, this is my tree. Yes, this is a tree, this is a space, this is a tree, this is a space, that's a tree, that's a space, and that's a space. Okay, if you don't want to do the shrubs yet and you want to erase the lines out of your trees first, that might not be a bad idea, guys. I just didn't think of that when I started my Sharpie because I wanted to show you guys how to do the Sharpie. Okay. So I'm going to erase this right now, and I'm going to go ahead and ink in the rest of these. So you guys can pause the video, and actually maybe I'll put it on this, and you guys can pause it on this and go ahead and just do the Sharpie that we discussed, and then maybe we'll come back in and do the grass and the shading before we do our watercolor, okay? Okay guys, so I hope that your Sharpie went okay. This is what mine looks like. I just went over everything that we already did. Now, if you're kind of feeling like you're about done with this and you just want to get into the watercolor, you can go ahead and start your watercolor now. You know, the squirrel is kind of a reddish brown, kind of an orangish brown. He has a white belly. And then we have some leaves and some trees and just sort of a background. I'm going to show you how to do a little bit more detail if you would like to do a little bit more detail and have it look a little bit more like mine, okay? So let's go back to here. Now on mine, that scribbling thing that we kind of did earlier, we're gonna do a little bit more of that. So I'm just gonna kind of wiggle my pen back and forth and show a little bit of like ground near my fern. I'm literally just going back and forth without a lot of pressure. Okay, you don't want to use too much pressure because then it'll be like really dark lines, and we don't want thick dark lines. I'm also going to do a little bit of grass over here by our squirrel. I'm just going to go up and down squiggles. Like that. Maybe some on the other side of our squirrel. Some up and down squiggles. Of course, we could do very detailed grass, but I don't really want that right now. We're just kind of giving an indication of something on the ground there by our squirrel, okay? Make that a little bit longer. Now, underneath of our squirrel, I want to have some shadows. So I'm going to do left and right lines. Oops, sorry. Okay, underneath our squirrel, I want to have a little bit of a shadow. So I'm just going to go left and right, just kind of lightly with my pen, and make some lines like that. Okay, you can also bring some of those lines just out into the foreground a little bit, just to give it something, so it's not just plain white paper. Okay, over here too, just back and forth, left and right. Maybe I want another little bit of grass over here. Okay, now back here by our trees, I'm going to do like a little bit of grass in front of our trees just to kind of blend in the base of that. Again, I'm just squiggling, guys. This is nothing complex, just up and down squiggles. Okay, and I think that's it. On the squirrel himself, I want to give just a little bit of an indication of his fur. So I'm going to just make some lines. I'm going to start with his arm here, kind of like where the shadow would be. So if you think about the light being coming from up above, his shadow is going to be on the bottom side of his arm, like that, and also kind of going down his back a little bit. So I'm just kind of drawing some squiggle marks. I'm going to do a couple over here. And I'm going to go along the direction of his body. Okay, his little legs here are kind of round. So I'm going to do, just a couple strokes like that. Maybe put a couple in here. There's no real science to this. It's just wherever you feel like maybe there's just a little bit too much blank white paper. You can put in just a tiny bit of indications of fur. In fact, you know what? I hadn't done any squigglies. Maybe I want to put some squigglies in here to show his fur. Now I'm going to come up and do his tail. And I'm going to follow that shape of his tail. I'm going to go up and around like that. You don't need a lot. You can have as many or as few as you want. I think something like that's fine. I feel like he needs a little squiggly, even though this is his white fur. I feel like he needs a little squiggly to show that it's fur. Maybe a little shadow down there. His face, I think, is fine. Maybe I just want to put a little bit of fur on his ear. I don't know, something like that. If you want to, back here, we could just have a few more like diagonal lines. Maybe there's a little bit of a hill back there. So this kind of, oh, sorry guys. So this sort of shows the shape of the hill in the background. And a couple more things that we can do. In this area here where there's shrubs, again, just sort of some scribbles or You can do kind of like mounds, kind of like half circles to show kind of like where bushes are. There's just some sort of vegetation back there. Okay, and then last but not least, on our trees, on our tree trunks, we can just put a couple lines. I'm just going up and down real straight. And if it's not dark, that's fine. Like my pen's hardly showing up, and that's really what I want. I just want like just a little bit of an indication of texture. Maybe like a little bit of the bark. Doesn't have to be a lot. You don't even have to do the whole thing. You know, like I said earlier, if you don't even want to do this, you can leave this part out. You know, if you're tired of drawing and you're just ready to get some color on, go for it. But for those of you that might want to challenge yourselves a little bit more, I thought that I would just go ahead and show you what I did on mine. Okay, so that is basically it. So there is our ink drawing. And now I'm going to stop filming for a second, and I'm going to put my eraser and my pencil and my Sharpie away, and I'm going to get out my watercolors and a cup of water and a paper towel and a couple brushes. So you can pause this and then come right back. Okay guys, so the very first thing that I'm going to do, I have this brush right here. I'm going to dip it just in the water a little bit just to get it wet. Dab it on my paper towel. And I'm actually going to start with the background on this part back here. So I want you to get kind of a light green. This color here is perfect. Put some water in it. Actually, I just grabbed some more water from my cup. I'm not sure if I filmed that or not, but I just got some more water. Put that in there. Now, there are lots of different ways to do watercolor. Right now, I'm not going to wet the paper first. I'm just going to throw this on there. Now, your paper is probably going to wrinkle up. That is normal. You could tape it down around the edges if you wanted to with some masking tape first. I'm just not. What I'm going to do is paint mine, and then when it's dry, but still just a teeny tiny bit damp, I'm just probably going to put it between some books and let it dry overnight so that it will dry flat. And guys, again, you know, this is how I'm doing mine. If you have a different way that you want to use your color, go for it. It doesn't have to look exactly like mine. This is how I'm imagining my forest. If you imagine your forest a different way, that's fine. Or if you want to put other animals in there, maybe you guys like birds or chipmunks, I don't know. Or maybe even a deer. Maybe some of you would know how to draw a deer. You could put that in there. But I'm picturing the sun going through the leaves in the background of other trees like that are far in the distance. And guys, I don't know if you're noticing, but my paint isn't too soaking wet. It's wet, but it's not overly wet so as to mess up my paper. Also, when you put on the paint, don't like go crazy with your brush, or never ever take your brush and go this way. Always put your brush down and pull the brush towards the handle. Okay, I'm left-handed, so I'm gonna pull it this way. Those of you that are right-handed, you would put it down and go this way. When you go towards the bristles like that, then it bunches the bristles up on the paper and it can destroy the paper. So try not to do that. Okay, now I'm gonna actually pick up that same color and put it on the ground up here in my foreground. I'm not pressing real hard. I'm just actually very lightly just sort of dragging the paint across the paper. And if your paint starts to not flow on easily, it's time to add a little bit more water into your paint. I just need one more hand to help me hold this paper still. You guys can hold your paper still. Mine will be okay. That's the thing about watercolor, it's very forgiving. Okay, there we go. So I have my background and I have my foreground. In my light green, I'm gonna rinse out my brush in the water and then dry it on my paper towel. Actually, now I'm gonna put a little bit more water on it because I wanna get a different color. I would like to get more of a regular green, a darker green. And you guys, I'm sure, don't have this exact same set, so just use whatever colors you have, just a different color green. And I want to go in here into my little ferns. It might be easier for you guys, depending on how big your ferns are, for you to switch to a smaller brush. I'm just going to use the very, very tip of this brush, and I think that'll be okay. But it might be easier to switch to a smaller brush now. There, kind of like that. You know, and if you want to, you can add some of this into your ground. Maybe you want to do some of it for your grass. Just up and down squiggles. Over here. And also use just the corner of your brush if you want. I'm going to put just a little bit down here in our shadow underneath of our squirrel as well. Like that. Okay, and now I'm going to take a little bit of a bluer green back here. It's kind of a teal color. I'm going to make sure I've got it nice and wet. And then I'm going to throw that back in here. Now I'm probably going to throw other colors as well, but I'm going to start off with this color. And try not to get it on your acorn or on your squirrel, but if you do, it's not the end of the world. Put some here between my ferns. And you know what, maybe you want to bring some of that into the foreground. That's fine too. I like using lots of different colors or different shades of colors. That's something that you'll notice in my work. You know, if I'm going to use a green, I try to use at least 3 shades of green, not just one. It just gives it a little bit of variation. Okay, like that. Now, I'm going to do a base color for my squirrel. Now, I happen to have kind of an orangish brown up here. If you don't have an orangish brown, just use like a regular brown. That's perfectly fine. Since I have this color, I'm going to go ahead and use it though. To get it nice and wet first. And remember that we're going to leave his little belly white. But everything else I can color in with this. There are all different kinds of squirrels. Most of the squirrels around here, I think, are either silver or black. There's actually a lot of black squirrels around here. I don't know if you guys have any in your yards, but I've seen black squirrels too. But there are also red squirrels, and different parts of the world have all different kinds of squirrels. So I'm not sure what kind this is, but I decided to make him a little bit more orangey red. It's a nice fall color. Now I do want to leave the little section under his eye a little bit lighter, so I'm going to leave that alone for right now. Color in by his mouth, and I'll color in around his nose. But the little section there, like between his mouth and his eye, I'm going to leave that open for right now. Come down here. So there's our little squirrel. I'm actually going to use that same color just for right now on my leaves. All right, so we're looking pretty good. Last thing before I switch brushes is I want to get a lighter color brown. I don't have much lighter browns in here. Maybe I'll just use this one and try to water it down a little bit. The more water that you have in your paint, the lighter it will be. The less water, the darker it'll be. So maybe I'll just, dab that off a little bit so it's not quite as much paint. And I'm going to come over here and just do my tree trunks real quick. Just throw some color on it. Because they're sort of in the background, they're not that important. They don't need to stand out a lot. We don't need a lot of detail on them. And they don't really even need to be that dark. But we just want to give an indication of trees back there. And for some of you, maybe your smaller brush is better for this. That's perfectly fine if you need to switch to another brush. So now I'm just going to use like a smaller, there we go, a smaller round brush. And let's do his acorn, and then we can throw in some other detail work. I'm going to use a brown, probably the same brown that I used for the trees. Now look, I'm not using as much water this time. And look at how much darker this is. This is the exact same color that I used on my trees, but it's not as diluted. Okay, and then I'm gonna have like a kind of a golden color for the top part of the acorn. Kind of like that. And you know what, I kind of like this golden color that I just used, so I might pick some of this up and just put it in a couple places on my leaves. like to just kind of play around with color. And it helps things to not be quite as flat if you have variations of color in them. It makes it look a little bit more 3D and gives it a little bit more life. So I'm going to do that. I'm also going to put a little bit of this color on my squirrel. It's a nice kind of golden warm color. I'm not going to color the whole squirrel, but I might just do like some strokes. Okay, if you don't want to do this, guys, if you are just happy with it the way that it is, that is perfectly fine. It's lovely, and we've done a nice squirrel and a nice habitat for him. I'm just doing a little bit of extra. So maybe some of my older kids that are out there, if you just want to give it a little bit of extra punch, you can continue with this. You know what? I think I want to use a real diluted version of that color. Maybe up in here. Maybe on his hand, on his little feet too. Maybe down here. I'd also use a smidge of that on his fur, his white fur, like maybe like a shadow color or a reflection of the golden color in the trees. I don't know. You know, and for me, I thought that was a little bit too dark. So I went back in with just water. I rinsed my brush off and I got some clean water and I'm putting it over top of that. And that will help it to dilute a little bit. Another trick that you can do if you do something that's too dark and you just really don't like it is that you can rinse your brush off, get some pure water, wet it, and then dab. And sometimes that will help you to pull some of the paint off of the paper. On my squirrel. Just in a couple places. My red's kind of running out a little bit. If you guys have a red, just don't dilute it too much. In just a couple places. Just kind of as a highlight. Maybe I put some around his little leg here. Maybe up here behind his ears. Maybe just a smidge on his head. Some on his arm. Guys, I know that I tend to get a little bit carried away with my coloring. I just have a lot of fun doing it. So if you guys are burnt out and you're kind of done, I'm sorry. You don't have to keep doing everything. I'm just playing and having fun now. So you can sit with me and play. Or if you're done, that's fine. Definitely have your mom send me pictures of your paintings though. I'm really excited to see them and I hope that you guys enjoyed this lesson. It's a little bit complicated. I don't usually do a whole lot of animals, but I thought for the first week of November, a little squirrel gathering some nuts and saving them away for the winter would be a nice image to do. I'm also going to throw in a little bit of purple, which is going to sound counterintuitive, but it's a really good shadow color. So maybe like up here in my grass. I want to throw in a little bit of purple. Now guys, with all of these colors, you don't want to do the whole thing because if you overdo it, that's just way too much. Just little bits here and there. Just pick a spot. Maybe I want a little bit on my fern. Maybe on the bottom part of my fern. Maybe the top part is nice and sunny, but the bottom part's shaded. Or maybe right here in the shadow underneath of him. Maybe I'll want a little bit of purple. Maybe on his tail. Around his leg. Maybe up here on his back. Anywhere where there might be a shadow. Right here underneath his little neck. All right, guys, we are almost done. I'm just going to play for a couple more seconds. Thank you guys for entertaining me and letting me paint and play. Put some purple in here. Maybe like where I drew my shrubs. Or down along the bottom where the shrubs hit the grass. Maybe it's a little bit shadier there. Okay, you guys play around and have fun. Very last thing, guys, very last thing. I'm gonna throw some of this light green that we had before, right there. I'm gonna throw a little bit on some of my trees, like maybe there's like a little bit of moss or ivy or maybe even a vine, I don't know. Something growing on them. I love moss. I'm not quite sure why, but it's something that I absolutely love. And I love the idea of it growing on the side of some of these trees. Maybe we'll throw a little bit of this in here too. This is our light green still. Maybe the top part of our shrubs are nice and sunny. Okay, guys. I think we're officially done now. So here we go. So that's my new one that I just did with you. And here's my original. I took a little bit more time with my original. You guys are welcome to go back in and do a little bit more detail work if you want. I just didn't want to take too long on the video. But even now, you know, if you wanted to go back in and get some more detail in with your Sharpie, you could do that. You can take however long or however short you want, as long as you're happy with it when it's all done. So thank you guys for painting with me today. I hope you guys had fun. I know this lesson was a little bit longer than some of my lessons because it was an animal and we were trying to make him look a little bit more realistic. But I hope that you guys all had fun and that you're happy with whatever level of drawing you ended up with, okay? As long as you did your best, I'm sure it's beautiful. You guys take care and have a good week, and I'll see you next week, okay? Bye.